In the windswept grasslands of Central Asia, sometime around 1162, a child was born who would reshape the course of world history. That child was Temujin, later known to the world as Genghis Khan. To some, he would become the embodiment of terror, an unstoppable warlord whose armies left cities in ruins. To others, he would emerge as a visionary ruler who forged order out of chaos and connected civilizations that had never meaningfully interacted before. His life was not a straight march toward greatness, but a brutal ascent shaped by betrayal, survival, and relentless ambition. According to Mongol tradition, Temujin entered the world clutching a blood clot in his hand, a sign believed to foretell greatness in war. Whether legend or symbolism, it proved eerily fitting. He was born into a fragile political landscape, where tribes shifted loyalties easily, and survival depended on strength rather than bloodline alone. His father, a minor chieftain, offered Temujin a place in tribal society, but that security did not last long. When Temujin was only 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival clan. Overnight, the family's status collapsed. The tribe abandoned Temujin, his mother, and his siblings, leaving them to fend for themselves on the harsh Mongolian steppe. Hunger became a constant companion. Trust became a luxury. In one of the darkest episodes of his youth, Temujin killed his own half-brother during a dispute over food, an act that revealed both the desperation of his circumstances and the ruthless resolve that would later define his leadership. Brotherhood, betrayal, and the fight for survival. As Temujin grew older, he began to rebuild his standing through alliances rather than inheritance. One of the most important relationships of his early life was with Jamuka, a fellow tribesman who became his blood brother. For a time, the two were inseparable, united by shared hardship and ambition. Yet beneath that bond lay a fundamental difference in worldview. Temujin believed leadership should be earned through ability and loyalty. Jamuka believed power belonged to those of noble birth. This philosophical divide would eventually tear them apart. But before that rupture, Temujin made a strategic marriage that strengthened his position. His wife Birte brought not only companionship, but political leverage through her tribe, an essential resource in a land where numbers meant survival. That fragile stability was shattered when Birte was kidnapped during a raid by a rival tribe. Temujin, forced once again into crisis, sought help from a powerful local ruler who had once been allied with his father. With borrowed strength and newly gathered followers, Temujin launched a retaliatory campaign, rescuing his wife and annihilating those who had wronged him. The lesson was clear. Alliances could be temporary, but decisive action was permanent. The rise of a new kind of leader. As Temujin's following grew, so did tensions within his camp. Jamuka and Temujin now stood on opposite sides of a widening divide. Jamuka attracted followers from aristocratic lineages, while Temujin drew warriors who valued competence over pedigree. Eventually, the Mongol tribes split, and civil war became inevitable. When conflict erupted, it was brutal and personal. Temujin's forces were once caught off guard and massacred by Jamuka's army. Captured leaders were reportedly executed in horrific ways, deepening the hatred between the former brothers. From that moment on, Temujin vowed never to suffer defeat again. The decisive confrontation came in 1204. By this point, Temujin had transformed his army into something revolutionary. Every warrior was trained in mounted archery and disciplined maneuvering. Promotions were earned through merit, not ancestry. He even employed psychological warfare, ordering his men to light multiple campfires to exaggerate their numbers and intimidate enemy scouts. When battle was joined, Temujin's tactics proved devastating. His forces unleashed coordinated arrow barrages, followed by swift cavalry charges. Feigned retreats lured Jamuka's troops into carefully prepared ambushes. The result was total victory. Jamuka fled, only to be betrayed by his own followers and delivered to Temujin. Offered mercy, Jamuka refused and was granted an honorable death. With his rival gone, the Mongol tribes were unified under one leader for the first time. In 1206, Temujin was formally proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler. Conquest without precedent. With the steppe unified, Genghis Khan turned outward. He understood that a strong Mongol confederation would never be tolerated by neighboring empires, particularly the powerful Chinese dynasties to the east. Rather than waiting to be challenged, he chose to strike first. The Mongol invasion of northern China was relentless. Cities that resisted were destroyed as warnings to others. When Genghis Khan's forces reached Zhengdu, modern-day Beijing, they encountered massive walls and sophisticated defenses unlike anything the nomads had faced before. Adaptation was swift. Captured Chinese engineers were forced to construct siege weapons, while supply lines were severed to starve the city into submission. The siege dragged on for months. Famine spread inside the walls, and resistance eventually collapsed. When the city fell, it was subjected to weeks of looting and destruction, cementing Genghis Khan's reputation as a merciless conqueror. Yet these campaigns were not driven by chaos alone. They followed a brutal logic: terror as a tool to prevent future resistance. From China, Mongol armies surged westward, overrunning Central Asia and reaching the edges of Eastern Europe. In just 25 years, they conquered more territory than the Roman Empire had in 4 centuries. At its height, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, covering nearly 10 million square miles, an expanse comparable to the entire African continent. Death, secrecy, and a legacy of power. Genghis Khan died in 1227 during his final campaign against Chinese forces. Accounts of his death vary, but his final instructions were clear: the empire must endure. He appointed his son Gede as his successor, trusting him to continue the work of conquest and consolidation. In death, Genghis Khan remained as elusive as he was in life. He was buried in an unmarked grave, its location kept secret by executing those involved in the burial. To this day, his tomb has never been definitively found. Yet his legacy did not end with conquest. Through countless offspring, born from wives and concubines taken across his empire, his genetic footprint spread astonishingly far. Modern genetic studies suggest that roughly 1 in every 200 people alive today may be descended from him. Order amid destruction. Despite his fearsome reputation, Genghis Khan was also a radical reformer. Within his empire, race, class, and ethnicity mattered less than loyalty and ability. He established a legal code that applied uniformly across tribes, outlawed the enslavement of Mongols, and enforced strict punishments to maintain order. Religious tolerance became official policy. Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and shamans were all allowed to practice freely, helping the empire govern vast and culturally diverse populations. Merchants were placed under imperial protection, leading to the revival of the Silk Road. Trade routes became so secure that travelers claimed a person could cross the empire carrying gold without fear of robbery. This unprecedented stability allowed ideas and technologies to move freely. Paper, gunpowder, and the compass traveled westward, while scientific and cultural knowledge flowed east. These exchanges would later help ignite the European Renaissance, linking Genghis Khan's empire indirectly to the foundations of the modern world. Villain, visionary, or both? Genghis Khan remains one of history's most polarizing figures. He was undeniably responsible for mass slaughter and destruction on a staggering scale. Entire cities vanished under his campaigns, and millions died in the process of building his empire. Yet he also created systems of governance, law, and exchange that outlived him by generations. He replaced fractured tribal warfare with centralized authority and transformed Eurasia into a connected world for the first time in history. Whether remembered as a barbarian conqueror or a brutal architect of global civilization, one truth remains undeniable: the impact of Genghis Khan still echoes across continents. Few individuals have ever altered the human story so profoundly and so violently as the boy once abandoned on the Mongolian steppe. Genghis Khan's legacy reminds us that history is often shaped by both creation and destruction at the same time. His empire was forged through violence, yet it connected civilizations and changed the world forever. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, like and subscribe.